Hello everyone, this is Tactical Lich here, and you might notice that today we are no longer in the battlefields of Total War Warhammer 3, instead we are back to Game 2. Honestly, in the hot mess that is Game 3, between the unlimited bug works, the incomplete roster of every single faction, as well as the poorly balanced domination mode, I feel like the hot mess that is Total War Warhammer 3 is actually less enjoyable to play and watch, so we're back here. Thanks to viewer submission, a Therian submission, we have a battle replay between the Bretonnians, Chevalier de Lyonnais, in fact, and also the Dwarfs. Now for army builds, we have the Chevalier de Lyonnais, so legendary lord Repanse, and accompanying her we have a Damsel of Life, as well as in disguise, her loyal companion, Henri le Massif, a knight of towering posture riding into battle on a majestic hippogriff. Now for the rest of the build, we have a front line of a mixture of battle pilgrims, peasant mobs to absorb blasting charges, at the back some elite sturdier backbone of foot squires, armor piercing anti-infantry should do short work of the miners with blasting charges if they don't get blasted by those gunpowder. Now we have some peasant archers at the back, pretty much staple for every single Bretonnian army, and a couple field trebuchet. Now artillery doesn't seem like a great choice against artillery-focused Dwarven factions, but actually artillery ignoring the high melee defense and armor of the Dwarven infantry can actually do some really cost-effective work against the densely packed Dawi shield walls. As for mobility, we have some questing knights at the back, as well as a single Wardens of Montfort, the mounted yeoman archers with poison. And that's basically it for the Bretonnian army. Let's go to the Dwarven roster and see what they bring to the battlefield. We have a front line of miners with blasting charges, great for clearing out chaff and weakening the foot squires with their blasting charges. At the back we have a wall of heavy metal longbeards with great weapons. Not only are they great at dealing with the Bretonnian infantry, but also with their high melee defense, they can hold down the charges of Bretonnian cavalry and use their armor-piercing axes to drag down the shiny white knights. For the artillery, we have some flame cannons, great for clearing out blobs of peasants, and also some bolt throwers. And in the middle, we have some Giant Slayers, as well as another Longbeard protecting Thoric Ironbrow, a very staple Dwarf Lord with his very powerful Rune of Doom. Providing those attack buffs will surely be helpful against any factions. That's all for army builds, and now let's get this show on the road. From my limited experience of playing Bretonnians against the Dwarfs, traditionally the Bretonnians do have a disadvantage against the Dawi. First of all, with the peasant infantry, they're no match for the elite Dawi metal wall of Longbeards. With high melee defense and buffed up by the Rune of Doom, Rune of Speed of Thoric Ironbrow, these elite Dwarven infantry can make short work of any Bretonnian infantry. Even the foot squires at only 24 melee defense will be cut down swiftly by the buffed up melee attack, and also on top of that we have the explosive charges from the miners. They will be great for clearing out the lightly armored peasants, as well as doing heavy damage to the foot squires. And as for the pride of Bretonnia, the peasant bowmen, well, we have the flame cannons here, perfect counter to the densely packed low leadership peasant bowmen, the burnt effect further lowering their morale. The explosions will be blowing up all those peasants in a quick hurry. Now, as for the cavalry department, even the questing knights will be cut down by the Longbeards. They don't even need Giant Slayers or Slayers to do the work. As long as there is some Longbeards with their high melee defense and armor-piercing weapon strength, they will be cutting down, dragging down the questing knights, as they do have the heavy mass to resist that devastating charges from those questing knights, holding line and afterwards dragging them into melee combat. So over here we can see that a Therian is making a rather creative build to counter the Dawi. We have Henri le Massif dropping in to disrupt those firing of the bolt throwers, pushing them off the artillery even. And for the whole time, the field trebuchet will be ignoring that melee defense, as well as the heavy armor of the Dwarven infantry, doing massive damage to them, as well as trying to snipe out the flaming cannons. and Repanse de Lyonnais charging in to support all these peasants as they're distracting the miners, absorbing the blasting charges. Same goes for the other flank as well. Repanse will be challenging Floric to a melee duel with much better abilities and items for dueling and also better melee stats. Repanse can single-handedly win this fight as long as there are no Dawi infantry to distract her, especially with the halo of Maidenly Wrath blinding surrounding enemies, lowering the stats of Floric Ironbrow. Now on the flanks we have some Pedal Pilgrims trying to flank around to get into the artillery as they are now distracted shooting at the Wardens of La Maison Tau, forcing it to go into melee combat trying to get out as much value as possible, distracting the artillery, pulling out again, harassing the enemy backline, while the peasant bowmen are finally pushing forward but now under fire from the flame cannons who have been pounded heavily by the field trebuchet. Down to only 2 artillery models, they'll still be doing some significant damage, blasting away all these peasant bowmen. But the frontline fight seems to be going in favor of the Bretonnians, with the foot squires pushing through, supported by Repanse. With the banner of Fleur de Lys providing plus 10 melee attack and defense, it did help the squires to clean up all these miners. But that is not quite the same on the Longbeards and Battle Pilgrim engagement, as the more elite infantry of the Dawi are pushing off the Battle Pilgrims, forcing some foot squires to support. On this end, we have the Battle Pilgrims charging in, but the Longbeards are waiting ready to countercharge, protecting the flame cannon, but what they cannot stop is Henri dropping in from the skies, smacking one of the artillery models, forcing them off the artillery as well, and now silencing that flame cannon, pulling in some giant slayers who try to drag him into melee combat and pin him down. As the giant slayers and Longbeards are distracted at the backline, we have the miners being worked down by a combination of foot squires and questing knights. Although the flame cannon is now online again, blasting away at these heavy infantry, but a nice timely heal will be topping up their HP, helping them fight a little longer in this melee engagement. While in the front line, Floric being isolated as the miners are routed, same goes for the Longbeards. With the remaining Longbeards distracted by peasants or Battle Pilgrims, Floric is now pinned in by 2 single entities with armor-piercing attacks, and both are better melee duelists than him. Even Rune of Doom is popped, helping him to counterpunch better against Henri, but with 2 characters sniping one, Floric is in a massive disadvantage right now. Dropping down to around 20% of his health, he is routed, and there is no more support from the Rune of Doom and Rune of Speed for the Dawi right now. And down to only 600 HP, he is finally pushed off from combat, but with the Longbeard so close by, Henri and Repanse decided to pull back and seek for a more favorable engagement, as the Longbeards are now weathering the storm, pushing off all the initial attacks of the Bretonnian infantry. So the peasant bowmen, who have suffered some heavy losses from the flame cannon bombardment, will be pushing in, trying to focus down all these Longbeards and, more importantly, the giant slayers. With their lack of armor and no missile block chance, unlike the dual axis variant, these giant slayers will be taking maximum damage from the peasant bowmen, although there is an online flame cannon firing in, trying to rout off these peasant firepower. But then the questing knight charges in from the back, destroying these artillery crew and quickly pulling out before the Longbeards can get on top, protecting the artillery models. And at the back, Floric Ironbrow regrouped, but unfortunately Henri le Massif is dropping down, smacking, destroying this Anvil of Doom. Truly no more rune support, no more leadership for the Dawi, they will be fighting on their own. And at this point, with an overview over the battlefield, the Dawi is on a massive back foot. You can see it on the balance of power. The Damsel of Life is being tied down by some giant slayers, but she'll be topping herself up with an Earthblood, while Repanse de Lyonnais, still very much healthy, will be charging in to support with some help of the peasants and also foot squires, while the peasant bowmen will be shooting down all these giant slayers. A duelist below is being dropped into this blob, pulling down some damage onto some Longbeards, some of the remaining giant slayers, as well as more Longbeards. So at this point, with the leadership dead, most units suffering massive losses, while the Bretonnians having a very healthy leadership, all the Dawis are running for their lives, leaving behind only the unbreakable slayers. And with one final slayer meeting his glorious death, Repanse will be claiming victory for the lady. Now let's have a look at the post-battle screen. We have the Chevalier de Lyonnais the single entities here, Repanse and Henri le Massif, doing great work sniping out Thoric, Ironbrow, and especially Henri, dropping in, silencing all these bolt throwers, allowing the few trebuchets to shoot down all the longbeards and the flame cannons undeterred by the firepower of the bolt throwers. The Air Force disruption from Aetherian today is absolutely on point. And with Henri responsible for the Air Force duty, we have Repanse providing support to the foot squads, one of them actually getting over 1,000 value for a 700 cost unit. This is an absolutely cost-effective usage, cutting down all the miners and even some of the longbeards with that Fleur de Lis banner buff plus 10 melee attack and defense. Truly an impressive feat for a peasant unit. However, without the banner support, the other foot squads not doing quite well throughout the whole game, getting some decent kills, but still up against longbeards and explosive charges, they are not exactly the greatest unit to fight the dwarves. As for the battle pilgrims and the peasants, well, they do not really have a good engagement due to the longbeards, and at the back we have the peasant archers. Due to the firepower from the flame cannons, they got shut down pretty hard, unable to do too much damage other than shooting up some of the giant slayers. However, the questing knights as well not doing too much damage due to the longbeards having high melee defense, charging into the miners as well. Not exactly the greatest, most expensive unit that they can fight, and taking quite some heavy damage in the process due to the flame cannons as well. As for the Wardens of Montfort, they're mostly there to harass, maybe shutting down some bolt throwers by charging into melee, but still, being shot up by flame cannons, they are not exactly having a good time whatsoever. As for the few trebuchets, doing some really nice damage with their armor-piercing shots, bombarding all these heavy infantry of the Dawi roster, as well as sniping out some of the flame cannons, limiting their damage output. However, the flame cannon still doing massive damage, 1,300 gold worth of damage against a bunch of foot squires, some of the battle pilgrims maybe, peasant bowmen, basically a very cost-effective anti-infantry blob weaponry in the Dawi roster that is perfect for countering all these peasant archers. Although the other flame cannon not doing quite as well, being shut down pretty hard by either the mobility or Henri dropping in here and there, and also being pounded by the few trebuchets. As for the longbeards, you can see that a lot of them are actually still very healthy. However, being distracted by some of the battle pilgrims being pulled out of position, they were not really in the position to protect the artillery, and not exactly seeing a lot of fighting throughout the whole game. While the miners being shut down by the peasants absorbing all their ammo, while the foot squires are great at killing them off in melee combat, especially when buffed up by Repanse. As for Thoric, he was really choosing bad fight in this game, being caught up by Repanse de Lyonnaise. That armor-piercing weapon strength is just too much for Thoric to deal with, especially with the attack buffs, with the Sword of Lyonnaise as well as the Banner of Fleur de Lis and Halo of Maidenly Wrath aiding Repanse in that dueling purpose. So in the end, because of Thoric being sniped out, despite there are still so many longbeards being rather healthy and cutting down enemy in droves, the balance of power was heavily tilted in the favor of the Bretonnians due to the hero squads being so healthy as well as the artillery being intact, while the Dawi artillery are all shut down by the Bretonnian mobility, losing a large amount of balance of power, and with only the longbeards remaining in the fight, the Dawi leadership simply cannot hold up due to army losses. Overall, a fun fight from Aetherian and also Artisan Tech Priest West. This replay was actually submitted around the release of Total War Warhammer 3, and I was really grateful for Aetherian for sending in this replay. It was a fun one, and more importantly, I feel like this is the content that I'll be continuing to do for quite a while, at least until the Immortal Empire is being introduced, because in the current state of Game 3, the incomplete roster and also the balancing issues in domination mode, as well as the rosters of the factions themselves, I think that Warhammer 2 is still a more enjoyable game. They are more stable after all. For example, the game doesn't crash when I tab out of the game trying to switch between windows. And also the tactics on land battles on the more complete rosters of the Game 2 and Game 1 factions, it gives land battles a much better spectacle than domination mode currently provides. And personally, I don't find myself enjoying playing domination that much compared to land battles. So for any players out there who are still playing land battles, especially if you're playing Warhammer 2 games, feel free to join my Discord or send me an email with the replay file attached. I'll be more than happy to take a look at it and see if I can make it into a battle replay cast. Of course, I will still be doing some Game 3 content on the side, but honestly, I feel like I'm going to shift a bit of my focus onto the Game 2 side of things, and we'll see how it goes from there. So yeah, that's gonna be it for today. Thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed the replay. If you do, remember to hit the like and subscribe to get notified every time I upload a new video. They'll be covering Total War Warhammer 3 and Total War Warhammer 2 content of multiplayer side of things, including wild army builds, battle replays like this one, and tips and strategies for Total War Warhammer multiplayer. And that's about it for today. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Tactical Lich, signing out.